Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session on engagement versus entertainment. We are going to be looking at how can we really tell our students are engaged in learning versus simply being entertained in our classroom. My name is Sarah Schroeder, and I am a faculty member in the School of Education at the University of Cincinnati. I'm also a mom of two middle schoolers, one in fully online school and one in more of a traditional brick and mortar face-to-face classroom setting. So, today during the session, we will identify those indicators of engagement that we're looking for in our classroom. We will differentiate between using technology for entertainment versus using technology for engagement. And we're going to identify some strategies that we can use to provide multiple means of engagement in our blended classrooms. So many days we feel like this.
In 1930, the Republican controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of anyone, the Great Depression, passed anyone, the tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which raised or raised tariffs.
So we all probably have felt like that at some point, where in reality, we want our students to see us as more of an Oprah. We want to be engaging and entertaining and lively and drawing them in with our stories. And some teachers naturally are just compelling and intuitively spark this zest for learning in their students. But most of us, in all reality, have to work at it. And we're going to talk today about how we can work at it beyond just entertaining our students and letting them have fun, which there is a place for in our classroom. And we know through the research that when students are having fun and they are in a positive mood, they do tend to learn more. So I'm not saying don't have fun in your classroom, but I am saying let's have some meaningful fun and let's see if we can get our students connected with deeper cognitive engagement. So, the first thing we need to do is think about what we mean by engagement. We have to formulate a definition. So, studies on engagement have uncovered that while students might be physically present and appear to be actively involved in using the technology tools, in reality, they might still be cognitively disengaged from the learning tools. And I always like to use the example of two of my students who I've had multiple times in classes at the university. And one of them, Katie always looks disengaged. She's looking down, she's texting, she has a look on her face that says, I don't want to be here sometimes. And Emily is always in the front of the room with her hand raised, eye contact. And what I found is that Katie's one of my best students. Even though she looks physically disengaged, she's actually cognitively very engaged and she produces some of the best work. And when I engage with her one on one and I talk with her one on one, I know she's excited and I know she's getting it. Emily just shows excitement and getting it, and she's engaged as well. But those two different versions of engagement in my classroom look very, very different, making it difficult for us to just look at our students and be able to tell if they're engaged. If we ask teachers what they would say if we ask them to define engagement, or what engagement looks like, they will typically say sitting up straight, raising your hand, eye contact, contributing to discussions. But we know from studying universal design for learning and various other research that those physical indicators, those observable indicators of engagement, don't always mean a student is engaged. It could just mean they're active. It could just mean that they are busy. So, how do we move from busyness or just activity in our classroom to actually actively learning and being cognitively engaged in what we are doing? The first question we can ask is what really makes us want to learn? What motivates us? And if you think about a hobby or a podcast you listen to, books you like to read, what makes us want to learn? What motivates us? What moves us to actually take part in something? Because as adults, we have a choice most of the time. Students don't always have a choice in what classes they have to be in, but as adults, we do. So, what motivates us to do that? About learning about space or cooking or horticulture or Ninjas, roller coasters, algebra. What motivates us to want to learn about that? I am not a nonfiction book reader on the whole, but I do love reading blog posts. And I do love reading books by one particular author of nonfiction, and that's Jane McGonigal. And what I find about her reading, her books, is that they are filled with stories and they're filled with practical application. They are filled with things that are meaningful to my life, that challenge me to take action right now and push me outside of my boundaries. That is what motivates me to want to learn something beyond a hobby. The best moments in learning usually occur if our body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. So Csikszentmihalyi says this in 1990, and what he's talking about is this theory of flow. And what flow really is just being in the zone. So anytime you have been doing a task and you forget about time, you are in the zone. Whether it's a sport, it's gardening, it's work, you are in the zone. So it's finding that sweet spot between anxiety and boredom. And I think this sweet spot is so difficult for us to find in the classroom sometimes, particularly in the fully online classroom. So we need to figure out, how do we manage our students' anxiety? Is it the structure of our course, the content we're providing, the types of assessments we're offering? What is causing anxiety for our students and making them shut down? And then what is happening if they're bored? Are we not challenging them at grade level? Are we not providing meaningful experiences? And so how do we balance those two things to find that sweet spot and help our students get in the zone of learning? The next thing we want to think about with entertainment versus engagement is really looking at how the two differ in practical terms. So this table helps us see how they are different in very clear terms. So if we are just entertaining our students, maybe we're just doing a Kahoot for review, the students are just absorbing that information, right? And they may not be actively trying to learn it. They might just be responding quickly, passively taking information in, repeating key ideas. They're attentive, but they're not committed. And they might be focused on the task. So something like Kahoot, which is a polling tool in the classroom, and it's very competition based and it's very bright and has music. The students oftentimes are focused on their score, not necessarily what they're learning through this process or what they're relearning through this process. And they are oftentimes just being compliant. So they're doing a task because they know they are supposed to, or they know it will give them a grade. They're not doing it because they are motivated by the topic or activity or that they want to learn. So with engagement, we really need to think about active learning. They are participating in the learning, in the creation of meaning. They are creating products, they are committed, and they are focused on the skill or learning and not just the task. So they're not just checking off boxes. They're actually focused on the process that they're going through in the learning. And when we think about it in the most general terms, entertainment is really content focused and teacher driven, where engagement is more learner focused and learner driven. So we can understand this better if we look at Schlechty's levels of student engagement. So high engagement means high attention, high commitment. Low engagement might mean rebellion. So their attention is diverted, they have no commitment, they're on their phones doing something else entirely, they're doodling without doodling about what the content or the task is they're supposed to be doing. And in that in between, you have those students who are complying just to get grades or who are complying just because they know it's what they're supposed to do. And then you may have those students who feel so anxious about it or just complacent about it that they retreat and they lose all attention and all commitment. So when we look at this, these different levels of student engagement, we can see that where we want students to be is in that green area, that high attention, high commitment level for engagement. So we need to think about what tools are drawing our students in, what activities are allowing them to have high attention and high commitment, and which ones are pushing them more towards ritual compliance to rebellion. So one thing we can do to get our students up to that level of engagement, that high commitment, high attention, is we can ask them supporting questions. So these questions are a nice starting list to get our students engaged. You'll notice they are all very student driven. They are not fact driven. They are not content driven. They are focused on the student's thinking and the student's actions. So what did you notice? What do you think? Can you tell me more about it? What have you tried? What are you wondering? Could you draw it or make a model? What do you already know that might help you? And I know as a parent, these questions also help when I'm coaching my students at home through homework or through remote learning. So these are questions you might want to share with your parents as well, or your caregivers as well, to give them some things to ask their learners to help get them through work at home and help them see what active learning and cognitive engagement looks like, help them troubleshoot and be more resilient through really good productive struggle. So the last thing we want to talk about is UDL and how Universal Design for Learning can make engagement more observable. And what we're really going to focus on are just a few key ideas with Universal Design for Learning. If you want to know more about Universal Design for Learning, you can go and do the activity on Universal Design for Learning specifically. And there we will talk about all three areas of Universal Design for Learning in more detail. But what Universal Design for Learning is really trying to tell us is that there's not one means of engagement that is optimal for all learners. So a fun Bill Nye the Science Guy video might engage one student, and I would argue that's not even real engagement, it's more entertainment. Where for another student, it may overwhelm them entirely. So we have to look at what can we do to provide options for engagement, because students all are motivated and engaged in different ways. Just like shoes, we can't all wear the same size or type of shoe. It doesn't fit all of us. And so in the same way, activities for engagement don't fit the needs of every student. And we have to understand that when a student is not engaged, we need to reach out to them. We need to help figure out why, because it could be stress in their life. It could be frustration with the topic. It could be all sorts of things. I know my daughter used to get very, very frustrated with writing activities in elementary school. And in first grade, she would just cry and melt down every time there was a writing activity. And it wasn't that she didn't like to write. She loves being creative and writing. It was the paper that she was using. And the paper they gave her, the lines were very short, and her handwriting was very large because she had some fine motor issues. And she would get so frustrated that she couldn't fit her sentences on the line, that once they started taping sheets of paper together for her, she was fine. She was creative, she was engaged, she had no problems with writing. And then as she started using computers, she just flew. It really gave her wings because there was no limit to how much she could write when she wrote on a computer. And I think right now she's working on a play that she's writing in 8th grade, and it's close to 100 pages at this point. So writing itself, the task, wasn't the problem. It was the tools that were being used. So we really need to look at what is the barrier our students are experiencing and how can we help them overcome that barrier. So, how do we know if technology we are choosing is engaging? This is another really important question when we're thinking about engagement. And I want to look at a few case studies, and these are from Liz Kolb's book, Learning First, Technology Second, which you can get from the ISTE bookstore on the ISTE website. It's a fantastic book if you are relatively new to educational technology and blended learning or just want to up your game. But this is an example of an essay assignment. So students are going to use an ebook app on their iPads that explains how to write a 5-paragraph essay. So as the students swipe through it, they get their name on the top of a leaderboard if they finish reading in under 15 minutes, and then the student starts working on their 5-paragraph essay. So the learning goal or the outcome was students will write a 5-paragraph essay. When we look at this assignment, some may say, well, this is engaging. They're using technology. They have an adaptive app. There's all kinds of fun things they're doing. There's a leaderboard. That's fun. Right? When in reality, we can see roadblocks all the way through this particular example. Students using the ebook app might not be optimal for all students. So there may need to be other ways to get that explanation of how to write a 5-paragraph essay. Maybe there's a great video that you found. Maybe there's a nice graphic organizer they can fill out. Maybe there is a reading they could do that is not on an ebook app. Maybe there is some type of drag and drop that they could do to really experience the different parts of the 5-paragraph essay. Maybe they could look at examples of 5-paragraph essays on topics that they might find interesting, and they could break those down. So there's so many different ideas we could do here to engage the learner beyond this ebook app. Then if each student has their own iPad and swipes through it, that does allow them to be independent and work at their own pace. So in theory, that would work really, really well, and it's highly adaptive typically when you're using an iPad. But when students finish, they get their name on the top of a leaderboard if they finish reading in under 15 minutes. When we look at our learning goal, time is not a constraint in that learning goal. It's not something we're trying to teach them. This isn't about speed reading. This is about reading and learning and writing. So we've put in an unnecessary constraint that is going to increase anxiety for quite a few students, and it's going to cause barriers in learning if those students aren't quick readers, if they're not using the app well, if their app isn't working properly, all of those things. And for some students, it's going to just promote that compliance piece where they know they want to get their name on the leaderboard, they're focused on the task, not the learning, and they're rushing to do it. Similarly to using something like Kahoot. Then the student starts working on their 5-paragraph essay. So they do have some choices here. They can use pen and paper, Word, or Google. Those choices are really nice to reduce anxiety. But what are they writing that 5-paragraph essay about? How are they being given choice in what they're writing about or in the types of topics they could cover? How could we motivate them in the actual assignment details and description to get them to want to write a 5-paragraph essay more? Could we give them real world application for it? Could we find some blogs they could submit them to for publication? Could we find an issue they are all passionate about or that many of them are passionate about and have them write a 5-paragraph essay to submit to our local government or our school board? So how can they have a real world audience for this? All of those things are going to improve engagement, and the same could be done in science, in math. So these are the questions I want you to ask. Where are the barriers that might be unmotivating students and reducing engagement? How can we improve cognitive engagement by giving them real world activities and examples and applications, real audiences? And then how can we make sure the tools we're giving them are varied so that they aren't causing barriers in and of themselves? So I hope you learned a few things about engagement versus entertainment in this session. Please post questions in Canvas for us, and we look forward to hearing what you think about this and how you plan to apply more engaging practices and more engaging technology choices in your own classroom.